This video is designed to help those that like doing push-ups to do better push-ups. A friend of mine messaged me. Apparently they have a bet going that they need to make 50 push-ups in a couple of weeks. So I said, okay. Of course, all these things run through my head. What's the point? What's the purpose? Make sure you don't hurt yourself doing it. Because what is it really but an ego thing? But hey, if you wanna have those physical tests of strength contests and you can do it without hurting yourself, great. So this is coming a little bit from a yoga perspective, but some of the things are not anything I learned from yoga, just from being a gymnastics coach and doing a little bit of group training, and it's going to tell you how to train to do a lot of push-ups if for some reason you need to be able to do that without killing your wrists and boring yourself to death with thousands of push-ups. So that being said, I don't do push-ups. I do what's called Chaturanga or low plank push-up, and I don't do a lot of those anymore, and I found that my strength has actually increased and my shoulders stopped hurting. But there is a way to do it that's a lot safer, and as far as I'm concerned, it builds better strength because it's incorporating more muscles. So even though it's not efficient, so to speak, because now you're incorporating multiple muscle groups, I actually think in some ways there is an efficiency to that. There's a debate. People debate, you're incorporating more, so you're burning more energy and this and that. But I think you're not going to fatigue those muscle groups as quickly. So in a way, it gives you more energy, and I think in some ways it's more efficient. But anyway, let's get to the push-up process. So I'm going to recommend that push-ups are not done with chicken wings, although some people like that, and that's fine. If it doesn't hurt you, great. Also, in yoga, a push-up is more considered that the elbows go pretty much back, although there are certain body types where elbows do have to go out and the person's still safe. I am not that person, but what I'm going to tell you is that if you pick a nice angle, which is the elbows go slightly back, and there's sort of this 45-degree angle, I find this to be sustainable for a lot of people, and I see a lot of really well-respected personal trainers using this where the elbows don't go out, they don't go in, but they find this middle ground. So you're going to have to figure it out. Like I said, I don't do push-ups a lot. I think the last time I did push-ups was in one of my teacher training classes, 8 weeks ago. And I find that, I was able to do 10 okay, but I don't feel like push-ups are like the end-all and be-all of tests of strength. I think it's great to be able to do about 10 or so without collapsing, but I don't see what the point is to doing more, Just me. So if you'd like to make sure that your shoulders, so here's point number one. So when you do push-ups and you start to get tired, because all you're thinking about is your arm bones start to rise up, and pretty soon you've got like this Quasimodo sort of structure in your back, and then you're suddenly all this stuff. And then a dog walks in front of you and you're like, holy crap. So in order to stay focused and to not let the arm bones creep out, which just means now your already shallow shoulder sockets are getting a little bit of too much work. Also remember that in a push-up, you don't have a whole lot of muscles like here. You have like a pec minor that attaches here. But if you don't start incorporating your core, and I'm talking core from your feet, curling your toes under, activating your heels, and core all the way up in here, okay, then you're going to have a problem. That's going to be all upper body. So let's do this from a perspective of how do I keep my shoulders safe? Well, let's take this. Flatten the fingers as much as you can. Spread out so somebody could, take a knife and stab between your fingers. And then through here, don't touch the blocks. Or maybe you touch barely, and then you execute low belly lift and rise. Maybe. So you can try a few of those. How do we save the wrists? Well, again, don't do 100 push-ups a day just to get better push-ups. Let's do some other things. Let's work different hand positions. So I call this the ridge taps when your fingers are flat. Be careful of your thumbs here. If you have loose thumbs, like really kind of what they call double jointed, it's not really correct thumbs, be very careful. And you want to have the sensation of retracting your claws, hugging the upper arms slightly in instead of collapsing out from your midline. And then take a diagonal position. You don't have to have ridge taps, you can have flat hands. Take a diagonal position and work different arm positions. So we're going to do elbows back. So I'm going to take the tip of the pubic bone down first, lift the low belly into the rib cage, and then the ribs, chest. Take a breath here, press into the back of your feet and into your hands. And then as you exhale, feel the lifting from the pelvic floor up through the navel, chest, and then work this diagonal position. This diagonal position, you notice that I keep telling you to activate pelvic area, core, like a little zipper. So let's use the zipper. Inhale, press down. Exhale, hug in. Find your zipper from the upper inner thighs, coming up the front of your body. And you may notice that I inhale to rest and I exhale to engage. Totally optional. But as an exhale, when you empty the breath out, I think it's easier to engage those low belly muscles. And always take time to come back. You can work to fatigue, but I think it's actually better to work to when you don't want to mentally, and then do about 3, 4, 5 more. And then if you're like, I could keep going, I could do this, just stop. If you always work to fatigue, then your body's going to have to start repairing things, which you don't want to get into. All right, what can we do for the core? Well, we don't have to be on our hands all the time. In fact, I don't recommend it. I recommend working some typical positions that's found in yoga for arm balances on your back here. So this would be crow on your back. So this is great if you want to get better at arm balances. So take your hands like you're high five in the sky. Let your sacrum be flat. So wiggle your hips like you're smushing something with your low back. And then keeping the heads of the arm bones resting into the ground. As you exhale, find that deep low belly lift and then rise up. Now notice I'm not lifting my head. We're going to talk about the head in a second too. But what I am doing is I'm filing this little bit of a curl. I think of it like a little curly coil down here. And I lift it through the center of my body. And now the head, neck, and shoulders rises without any strain or tension. And then you may notice that my ears stay almost in line with the shoulders, almost. That's important. And we'll talk more about the head in your push-ups later. So I could do these pretty much indefinitely. You want to make it a little harder? Lift and try to draw the knees into the armpit. But everything lifts from an activation of that low belly work. I'm not saying that you have to squeeze it and harden it. Find a happy medium where you can start a chain of events all the way up into the solar plexus region. And then maybe you can pretend like you're lifting your intestines into the umbrella of your diaphragm. That's a great visual, I'm sure. All right, so you can also work on holding, but breathe while you're holding. Relax the head, neck, and jaw. And you can even pretend like you're talking to somebody while you do this. And then come down, roll to one side. Don't stress the head out. Push up here, like here. Let's talk about the head in push-ups. All right, so this is true in Chaturanga and plank too. So when your head hangs down below the line of your spine, the energy column, it starts to create a lot of pressure because you've got anywhere from 8 to 10 pounds in your head in general. And then once the spine starts to flex and the head comes forward, this is true when you're like this, then the pounds of pressure become more like 12, 15, 20. It's just like the idea of, if I jump off that couch and land there, it's a certain amount of pounds of pressure on my body. But if I jump from something higher, more pounds of pressure. So the more the angle in your neck is straightened and then decreased in the front, it's going to create more pounds of pressure. So you can do yourself a big favor by keeping the ears and the shoulders and the tailbone all in a straight line, and the heels. So the heels are important because when your heels press out, you actually get to activate some of those inner thigh muscles which connect to core. So keeping the head neutral is really such a help. And then as time goes on and you feel a little weaker, you may find that you start incorporating the jaw. Well, that's going to weaken you a little bit in your pelvic region too. So be careful. If you remember that your low belly lifts, and when I say lifts, I don't mean lifts. I mean lifts, lengthens. You can have a little hollowing, but you're not supposed to really round. So there's that. Now, all this pushing and pushing away, what about pulling towards you? Same muscles, just used differently. And it's just as valuable, okay? So I highly recommend getting some sort of resistance tubing. This tubing is really light for me, but it doesn't matter because I'm not going for like hardcore fatigue the crap out of myself. I'm going to try to find the angle of my arms that I would use for a push-up. And for me, I'll need to stand back a little more. And then I make sure I'm not gripping too hard, that my wrists don't create a huge angle. I know, super squeaky, super squeaky. And then sometimes I even do it without my hands really gripping too hard, like my fingers aren't wrapping around. And then I practice. So inhale, a little bend in the knees here so your feet feel really grounded, like in 3 corners of your feet, right? So heels, pinky, big toe. And then I practice that little lifting of the low spine out of the pelvis. So instead of this, don't be tempted. And ideally this wouldn't be way up here, but that's what I got. All right, more core work. One more thing here. So you don't have to be on your hands all the time to do planks, right? There's forearm plank. A couple ways to do this. You take your hands together and find a good forearm plank position, and then feet apart is fine here. Actually, it's probably recommended. So you may notice that over time, again, shoulders hunch up, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a little tactile marker for, okay, draw the elbows down into the ground, but the upper arms in. You don't have to squeeze like a madman, but it should be there. And then the shoulder blades tend to hike up. These are your shoulders coming up because your shoulder blades are lifting or elevating. So think about the inner tips of the shoulder blades drawing down towards your hip bone. And then this is really good. This is going to help you a lot. So it's not all front body. So you take the heels to the right, take a breath, exhale them all the way over to the left. So remember, you're not just exhaling and inhaling at certain times. You're inhaling down the body, not super deep breaths, but moderate. And then when you exhale, you're drawing the inner thighs in a little bit, lifting from pelvic floor. Find the ripple up the front of your spine. And a lot of times when people do this, you'll see their butt lifts on the transition. If you need to do that, then what I would recommend is one knee down and then switch. Okay? Otherwise, trying to keep the hips level is your goal. And let's take the low back out of the equation. If you think, oh, I'm doing this right, it's so perfect, it's so lovely. And then you wake up the next morning like, oh, why does my back hurt? Well, short of having a personal session with me, this is the best you can get. Maybe get somebody to watch you. Otherwise, if you have a block or a can of soup, works just fine. Just make sure you're not touching it. That's all. If you get down to it, stop, take a break, and do as many as you can without touching it. And that'll be your side body. Okay? And then the other thing I would recommend is that you always stretch. after this. Always, always stretch. Your muscles are only as good as they can be in a relaxed state. So you could be super strong, like, you know, Arnold or The Rock strong, but those muscles, they're always looking perpetually flexed. And yeah, they have, they had to or have to do it for their job, whatever, and that's their thing. But over time, things get so tight and so constricted that mobility is going to be an issue. And mobility is what gets you to old age happily. That's just my opinion. So here's a pec minor stretch. Some people think this muscle can't be stretched. I don't really know, and I don't really care at this point, because after all those push-ups and stuff, you want to go over. So here's the deal. Right arm is 90-degree angle, and I mean it. Don't bring it in unless you absolutely have to. If you feel like you have to bring it in to a lower angle, that's fine. See where 90 degrees takes you first. Other thing is this whole shoulder riding in business. So if you feel like you're going to have a problem with that, maybe start with it in. From here, my elbow actually reaches out a little bit, because otherwise my shoulder comes up to my ear. And I just take the left side of my body, I peel it up. Now again, I don't want to be crunching here, so I have that little idea of the lifting of the floor of my body into the first and second floors. So the basement lifts up into the middle of the house. And just be really careful with this stretch if you've ever had any shoulder injuries of any kind, especially dislocation or just a brief subluxation of the shoulder. So same idea. I'm really careful that there's space between, like there's like a little cave here in between my ear and the top of my arm bone. And some people won't be able to get their leg this high. You're more concerned with what can I do that stretches up in this area. So I'm not going to stay there forever. But the stretching is generally felt here, although some people will feel it in their back as they make the twist happen. And then of course, you want to stretch out in different ways. So back body stretches, really important, I think, overlooked. So a little cat-cow here. And if you have the capacity, grabbing opposite elbows, doing a little bit of pulling, but gentle. So it's not yanking. You can also try to grab opposite tips of the shoulders. Keep the shoulders down as much as you can without forcing, and then let the bottom elbow lift the top elbow. You're probably going to feel a stretch up here, and then try to relax the jaw as much as you can. If it's so much you can't breathe, or you're like, just stop. And then of course there's eagle from there. Okay, same idea with the other side. Maybe you go back and forth. There's a little love. Bottom elbow lifts up. So for me, I feel a little pain here. So when I do this side, I don't bother with this. I just go right into eagle, and it's good for me. But I also have shoulder injury issues. And then pulling to one side, we didn't do that. But notice that my hips didn't go to the right. This is just like upper chest. And then I could have done this on the other side. Whatever arm is on top, you pull to the opposite side. Super good. Okay, I could keep going, but I'm not going to. So if you are in the midst of a push-up contest, then keep practicing. Keep practicing the push-ups themselves, but remember to work how your core activates your push-ups, and anything where you're trying to manage your body weight on your hands and/or hands and feet. The forearm plank exercises are actually going to be really, really awesome, the ones that went side to side. I would do those more than the actual push-ups themselves. But nothing beats a private session with somebody. So if it's me, or if it's a well-respected personal trainer, somebody that's worked in strength and conditioning for 15 to 20 years like I have, great. Otherwise, I hope this video helped. Remember, this isn't a cure for anything. It's not the end-all be-all, so feel free to seek out other information. And if you need more videos like this, let me know in the comments. Please subscribe, like the video, and I'll see you later.